Dear Taurus, there are some mornings that feel quietly strange. Not the kind with a blaring alarm or bright sunlight pulling you awake. These mornings arrive slowly. The air is still. The room holds on to the breath of the night before. And Taurus opens their eyes with a feeling that is hard to name. I have noticed people who carry Taurus energy in moments like this. They do not rush to get up. They do not reach for their phone. They stay there a little longer, staring at the ceiling, listening to distant traffic outside, feeling something move gently inside. It is hard to say whether it feels happy or heavy, only that it feels deeper than usual. Morning light, when it touches the corner of a wall or the edge of a curtain, seems to move with a different rhythm too. It does not push. It does not demand. It arrives slowly, almost as if asking permission. And in that moment, Taurus emotions do the same. They do not rush in, they simply appear. Like a small flame carefully protected, warm enough to feel, never loud, never wild. Maybe it comes from a restless night, maybe from a thought that never quite settled. But Taurus does not try to solve it right away. There is a quiet familiarity with letting things stay as they are for a while. Emotions are allowed to exist without needing an explanation. I remember one morning coffee with a Taurus friend. He spoke very little. Just watched the road outside the cafe as the crowd slowly grew. Then, softly, he said, "I do not know why, but this morning everything reaches me more clearly. No dramatic story. No turning point. Just a feeling." That is often how Taurus moves through emotion. When it arrives, it does not announce itself with noise. It arrives with weight. Light weight, but enough to be noticed. Like stepping into a quiet room and suddenly feeling your body soften, even though no one says a word. On mornings like that, Taurus might brew coffee more slowly. Stand by the window a little longer than usual. Think of someone without a clear reason. Not intense longing. Just a quiet presence in the mind, like a porch light still glowing even after the sun has risen. What becomes clear is this. In moments like these, Taurus does not try to understand emotion. They live alongside it. Like walking down a familiar road and realizing your footsteps sound different today. Slower, deeper, more real. And perhaps it is mornings like these, without noise, without explanation, that allow emotion to be felt most fully. Not to change anything, only to notice that sometimes the heart needs to wake a little earlier to truly feel itself. And as the morning moves on, that feeling does not disappear. It stays with Taurus through the day, very light, very slow, like a thin layer of air surrounding each moment. There are times when Taurus sits alone and does not feel lonely at all. No need to turn on music. No need to search for something to fill the time. Silence no longer brings restlessness or impatience. It feels like a quiet room after the door has closed, with just enough light, not too bright, not too dim. In that room, emotions are allowed to rest, without being judged, without being pushed to speak. Taurus has always lived at a slower pace, but lately that slowness seems to carry another layer of depth. Silence is no longer an empty space that needs to be filled with work, schedules, or polite conversation. It becomes a refuge, a place where the heart can sit down for a moment, lean back, and breathe more evenly. Like coming home after a long day, not turning on the lights right away, just standing still for a few seconds, feeling the familiarity settle in. Within that silence, emotions connected to love appear differently too. Not loudly, not with demands. They do not knock. They simply stand nearby, close enough for Taurus to notice. It might be the image of someone briefly passing through the mind. It might be a soft warmth somewhere in the chest, very subtle, like a small flame carefully protected. Taurus does not try to name it. It does not have to be longing. It does not need to be expectation. It is simply presence, like a kitchen light left on late at night, even when no one is cooking. It does nothing, yet it changes the feeling of the space. Some evenings, Taurus looks out the window, at the familiar street still lit, traffic thinning as the night deepens. There are no big thoughts, no questions waiting for answers. Just the sense that everything is settling, and in that settling, love in its broadest sense becomes clearer. Not because someone is there, but because the heart is quiet enough to notice what it is feeling. Silence, now, is no longer something to fear. It does not take anything away. Instead, it holds many things that Taurus may have overlooked before, when life was too busy or when being strong felt necessary. In that quiet space, emotions are not forced to speak loudly just to be seen. They only need to be there, in their proper place. And perhaps it is in no longer trying to fill the silence that Taurus begins to realize something gentle. Love does not always need to be proven or displayed. It only needs a space that is calm enough to be fully felt. And when the heart begins to grow familiar with that quieter rhythm, very small things start to come into focus, as if the light has shifted its angle. It feels strange. Details that once passed by too quickly now seem to slow down. A sentence that sounded casual at first lingers longer in the mind. Not because of what was said, but because of how it was said. Soft or firm, warm or distant. Taurus starts noticing the pauses between words, the other person's breathing when the room goes quiet. There are moments when no one speaks at all, yet emotion still reaches across, very gently. A passing glance on a familiar street. Just a second, but enough to soften the heart. Not because that look promises anything, but because it carries a sense of real presence. Like walking past an old house, seeing the windows still lit, and suddenly remembering how long you once stood there. No need to go back, the memory finds its way on its own. There are moments of waiting that last longer than usual. No irritation, no impatience, just time moving more slowly. And in that slower space, Taurus becomes more aware of their own sensations. Hands resting on the table, the remaining warmth of a cup of tea, the steady movement of the second hand on a clock. Everything is ordinary, yet nothing feels invisible anymore. These small things do not ask to be explained. They simply exist, like stones on a path that Taurus once walked past without it looking down. Now, each stone seems to have its own shape, its own color, its own quiet story. There is no need to pick them up, only to know they have been seen. At times, Taurus wonders why these moments are held onto for so long. But the question fades, making room for something more familiar. A sense of learning how to feel with greater sensitivity. Not to become overwhelmed, but to be more honest with what is happening inside. Like a small flame carefully protected from the wind, emotion does not flare up, but it burns steadily. It gives weight to things that once felt ordinary. Not heavy, just enough to be noticed. And through all of this, Taurus does not need to change anything. Only to slow down a little, so that the things once overlooked have a chance to stay. And when those small things are no longer pushed aside too quickly, emotion begins to change the way it shows up. It no longer stays distant, like an idea floating somewhere in the mind. It moves closer, very close, close enough to be felt. Taurus once thought of love as something that had to be built carefully, like a house with a solid foundation, thick walls, doors shut tight against the wind. That way of thinking was never wrong. It is just that now, love no longer lives in the blueprint. It shows up as a lived sensation, immediate, real, present. Like placing a hand on your chest and noticing your heartbeat is there, steady, without needing proof. There are moments when Taurus feels love like breath. Not always noticeable, but if everything pauses for a second, it becomes clear how it supports each moment. An afternoon walk on a familiar street. A falling leaf brushing against the shoulder. A simple dinner, warm light filling the room. Nothing remarkable happens. Yet the feeling of being fully there is sharper than ever. Love, right now, does not need to be named. It does not need promises or long-range plans. It only asks to be felt through the body. Through the way Taurus sits down and exhales more gently. Through the way the eyes rest a little longer on something small. Through the slight trembling of the heart, not from fear, but from realizing the ability to feel is still alive. At times, this emotion carries a very particular weight. Not heavy, but like the familiar weight of an object in a coat pocket. You know it is there. And because it is there, your steps feel steadier. Taurus may never say this out loud, but somewhere deep inside there is a quiet recognition. Love is no longer something to think about endlessly. It is something to live alongside. Subtle tremors appear too. Nothing dramatic, nothing loud. Just a slight unsteadiness when standing in front of something real, like walking into a quiet room after spending hours in a noisy street. The ears need a few seconds to adjust. The heart does too. It learns how to open, slowly, without rushing. Taurus does not try to control this feeling. There is no need to hold it tightly. No need to push it away. It is allowed to stay, like a small flame placed at the center of the room. Bright enough to see by. Warm enough to sit close to. Never burning. In that light, love is no longer a concept to reach for. It becomes an experience unfolding, moment by moment. And perhaps it is in living this way with emotion that Taurus notices something very gentle. When love is felt as part of everyday life, it does not need to be proven through anything grand. It only needs to be acknowledged. In silence. In ordinary moments. So, it can continue to exist in the most honest way possible. And when love no longer has to strain just to stay upright, the heart slowly stops defending itself. It begins to allow itself to move downward, into deeper layers, very slowly, very carefully, like walking down a staircase in dim light, one step at a time. Taurus has never been the type to stir emotion unnecessarily. Some things are kept at just the right distance, enough to feel, not enough to be swept away. But lately, emotion seems to find its own way downward without needing an invitation. There is no sense of being pulled. Only a quiet shift, like water soaking into the ground after a long rain. No noise, yet the effect lasts. When thinking about someone, the feeling no longer stays on the surface of what they say or do. It reaches for what is harder to see. The way a silence is placed between two people. The way time feels faster or slower when sitting beside them. Some thoughts are not even about the other person, but about the self. About how one responds. How one opens. How one chooses to remain in that moment. Taurus begins to notice emotional layers that may have been overlooked before, back when keeping everything stable took so much energy. These layers are not intense. They feel like warm soil beneath the surface, where roots settle in to stay upright. Touching that place does not overwhelm the heart. Instead, it brings something different. A sense of deeper connection with oneself. Some evenings, when the city grows quieter, Taurus sits alone under soft, late-night light and lets thoughts drift at their own pace. There is no effort to analyze. No need to find answers. Just noticing where emotion rests. At times, the heart feels slightly more open. At other moments, old fears are still there, but they no longer take up all the space they once did. These deeper layers do not ask for immediate change. They only ask to be touched, to be acknowledged. Like standing in front of a room that has been closed for a long time, simply opening the door enough to let light come in. Everything inside reveals itself naturally. Not to be rearranged right away, but to know it still exists and that it is safe to see. Taurus does not move quickly through this process. The heart chooses its own rhythm. Each time it reaches a little deeper, emotion feels more complete, more grounded. Not because everything is understood, but because it has been allowed to be felt honestly. And within that slowness, something very subtle begins to take shape. A sense of trust. Not necessarily trust in another person, but trust that the heart, when listened to long enough, will know where it belongs and how deep it truly needs to go. When the heart has chosen its own depth, memories no longer try to force their way back through noise. They return quietly, as if they sense there is finally enough space to receive them. Some memories seem to have rested untouched for a long time, never stirred, never called by name. And yet, in very ordinary moments, they appear. While Taurus washes their hands under warm water, while waiting at a red light on a familiar street, while a late-night lamp is turned on in a quiet room, they arrive without sharp sadness, without heavy regret, only as a light presence, like an old scent passing through the air and then fading. Taurus no longer flinches when these memories surface. There is no rush to push them away. No need to hold on to them for too long. Perhaps now the heart is steady enough to recognize that memories do not return to cause pain. They return to be seen through a different lens, calmer, softer. There are small images. A rainy afternoon. A conversation left unfinished. The familiar feeling of sitting beside someone in silence. Before, these memories might have caused Taurus to close inward, or wonder why things never went further. Now, when they appear, the emotion they carry feels less sharp. Like late-night light falling on old objects in a room. Everything is still there, but the shadows have softened. In this gentle return, Taurus notices a change in how love is understood. What has passed is no longer something to judge as right or wrong. There is no longer a need to sort memories into what should be kept and what should be forgotten. They are simply part of the journey, like stretches of road already traveled to arrive where one now stands. Some past bonds, when remembered, no longer feel heavy. Only a quiet acknowledgement remains. I was there. I felt that. And it helped shape who I am now. There is no need to go back. No need to cut anything away. Only to place it gently where it belongs in the heart. Quiet evenings become the moments when memories visit most easily. When the outside world has softened its noise, Taurus sits in a familiar room, light warm enough to avoid exposing everything. In that space, memories are no longer something to confront. They are something that can sit nearby, very calmly. And perhaps it is the way these memories return, without demand, without urgency, that reveals something deeply human. The heart has learned how to be kinder to itself, kinder to old choices, kinder to feelings that were once incomplete. Not to seal the past away, but to allow it to no longer ask for attention. When memories are seen with that kind of gentleness, they stop taking up space in the present. Instead, they withdraw naturally, leaving behind a sense of fullness that is hard to name. As if the heart has quietly closed an old door, not out of fear, but because it has found enough peace to keep moving forward, lighter. And when the steps are no longer weighed down by what has to be carried, Taurus no longer feels the need to move faster or go farther. It is enough to walk at their own pace. And within that moment, emotion naturally begins to feel fuller. What is interesting is that Taurus does not really long for something new. There is no sense of lack that demands searching. No empty space that needs to be filled with something grand. Instead, there is a clear presence of what already exists. A quiet afternoon. Sunlight leaning through the window. A conversation that does not need to last long. A warmth slowly spreading through the chest, with no clear beginning. When thinking about love, Taurus no longer asks where it should lead or what it should become. Emotion now feels like a steady current of water, not something that needs to be pushed in order to be felt. There are days when simply sitting beside someone in silence is enough. No explanations needed. No proof required. Wholeness comes from not having to shrink one's feelings to fit into a certain shape. The heart seems to have learned how to hold many layers of emotion at once without losing balance. Warm and cautious at the same time. Open, yet still keeping a private space. These states no longer contradict one another. They coexist like different rooms within the same house. Taurus moves through them slowly, without needing to open or close any extra doors. Some evenings, when the light in the room softens, Taurus realizes there is no need to name an emotion in order to understand it. Wholeness is not found in intensity, but in simultaneity. Like sitting in front of a small fire, feeling its warmth while hearing the wind outside. There is no need to choose one sensation over the other. Both are there. Taurus no longer compares the present feeling to what once was. There is no measuring of loving more or loving less. Only a simple recognition. There is a fuller presence within one's own emotions. When sadness comes, it is allowed to stay long enough. When joy appears, there is no rush to hold it tightly. Everything arrives and leaves in its own rhythm, without being stretched or forced. Perhaps this sense of wholeness comes from no longer needing to prove anything to oneself or to anyone else. Love is no longer something that must be done correctly. It is something to be lived honestly. Like walking down a familiar road at night, rows of yellow lights stretching ahead, not too bright, yet bright enough to see where you are. In that feeling, Taurus does not need promises or distant visions of the future. Only a moment that feels real. A moment where the heart is steady enough to not reject any layer of emotion that is present. And once inside that wholeness, everything else naturally becomes lighter. Perhaps it is precisely because there is no longer a desire for more that Taurus is able to feel more. Not because the world has changed, but because the heart has stopped rushing. And in that slowing down, love, in the most human sense, finds enough space to spread quietly, deep, and warm. And when emotion finally has a place to remain in that way, everything seems to no longer need a name. This may be just an ordinary stretch of time in Taurus's life. No clear marker to remember. No event large enough to retell. Just days moving at a slower pace. And within that slower rhythm, the heart can hear itself more clearly. Like standing alone on a familiar road and noticing that today, your footsteps sound different. Not because the road has changed, but because you are walking with a different state of mind. Taurus may not need to search for answers to what is being felt right now. It is enough to know the feelings are present, and that there is enough patience to not push them away. Some things, when they are not rushed to be understood, naturally settle into their proper place. Like a late-night lamp in a quiet room, not lighting everything, but offering just enough warmth to change the feeling of the space. Within that pause, each person may notice something very personal. Some may feel themselves opening a little more. Some may realize they are holding on to something worth honoring. And others may simply notice how much easier it feels to breathe when there is no need to hurry forward. If you pause for a moment and listen, do you sense something quietly shifting inside your own heart? It does not have to be anything large, just something real, something human, enough to remind you that you are fully alive in this moment. Perhaps this story does not need to close with a clear meaning. It can rest right here, like a slow breath, leaving behind a silence that feels just right. And within that silence, emotion, if it chooses, will find its own way to stay, gently, deeply, in its own way.